Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and today's show is all about Disney Parks merchandise. Throughout the years, there have been plenty of trends and fads among the world of Disney Parks merch. Pin trading is probably one of the most popular items, but there's so much more, including vinylmation, pressed coins, rose gold, and more. I'll be chatting with Disney Parks merch fan Jeffrey Riccio about all of these unique souvenirs right after this. These days, we're all spending more time at home, so take this time when we're being forced to slow down to enrich your life. One way you can do this is through audiobooks, and right now you can get yourself a free audiobook over at audibletrial.com/DCTC. After all, Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. For you business folks out there, you may enjoy former Disney CEO Michael Eisner's audiobook, Working Together: Why Great Partnerships Succeed. This book, along with many others you may be interested in, are all available for free right now at audibletrial.com/DCTC. No matter what your interest may be, Audible makes it super easy to type a keyword in their search bar, and then tons of suggestions will pop up. All of us want to read more, but sometimes time simply doesn't allow it. An audiobook is a great way around that, so you can listen as you perform other tasks. Get your free audiobook right now at audibletrial.com/DCTC. That's audibletrial.com/DCTC.
It's time to dive into today's Disney Dialogue.
Hey, Jeff Riccio, welcome to the show. First time on the show, long time listener. Thanks for writing in and suggesting this episode topic.
No, thanks for listening to it. I think it's really cool. Like I mentioned to you when I first broached the subject, was I liked a lot of the little topics you had within topics where you mentioned merchandise, and I'm like, I think it'd be kind of cool to just talk about that. And there's just cults of people who love Disney merchandise going back to before you and I were even born. So yeah. I think it's just interesting to see the trends and where things go.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge episode, that whole week of episodes. We did like an all merchandise Galaxy's Edge thing, and that kind of sparked the idea for this.
No, I liked the idea of, okay, this land was opening, and you had the person who was on with you was talking about like sort of like the trends and what they wanted and what actually Disney decided to prioritize. And I think that's sort of an interesting idea of like, okay, what does Disney think people want? Mm-hmm. And I think the subjects that you and I will talk about, you'll see like over the decades, like what it is that people do find interest in, some of the stuff that just drops off really quick, and I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to start back in 1987, and this is with pressed coins. And I got to start this off just by saying I am in shock how I recently learned how popular these things are, because I recently started giving away on Instagram Live. If I'm in the park, I'll just kind of do a contest where you guys will take a poll and say which one you want, and then somebody watching will win it. And so when I do that, I'll go to one of the machines and take the photo, send it out, you guys can vote, and then I'll go back later and press the coin, whichever one wins. And I'm telling you, I have gone to multiple machines throughout the park at various times of day, and every time I go, I've had to wait in line because somebody has been pressing a coin. And up until this point, I would have thought,
about right.
I never thought in a million years that would be the case. I was really shocked about that. So it started way back in 1987 for Disneyland and 1994 for Walt Disney World. And I'm curious, have you ever collected the pressed coins?
Yeah, so quick story. My wife and I went in 2016, and she was going around to all these machines and pressing them, and I'm like, look, like, I don't really care. I mean, they're cool. I loved them as a kid, but she's going around and collecting. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, it turns out her idea was to make, and we actually have it in our living room, like a piece of art with all of the pressed coins we collected on the trip. So we have the Mickey ear logo created with all these pressed coins. And what I found when I looked like how to do this, there are hundreds of things like that. So people not only collect them, but they make things with them, which I think is, I was like, okay, that opened my eyes very much so, because I always thought like, okay, yeah, it's cool for kids. My memory of it was doing it in the 90s as a kid.
Yeah.
But now it was like, okay, wow, there's an actual thing behind this.
I didn't realize that. That is very interesting. You're going to have to send me a picture of that artwork. Did you ever calculate how much money it cost to create that artwork?
I think it was like $75.
Yeah,
I think something like that.
I often wonder if I were to like go to Disneyland Resort one day and press every coin that they had, that they offered, how much that would actually cost. I'm sure it would be very simple to figure out, just a little time consuming. But yeah, it's wild how much people love these things. I was in shock. Of course, these are not, unique to the Disney parks. They've been around since I believe it was 1893 at the World's Fair. So they've been around for a very long time. They have accessories, of course, like the coin books. And I've always felt that these books should actually be either super inexpensive or given away for free. Because if like almost everybody in the park had one of these, people would be dumping even more money into these machines. But they're pretty expensive. I think they're around $13 or so, if I'm remembering correctly. I feel like I've looked and they were like $12.95, which is a little hefty in my opinion.
And they have slots for things that aren't pennies as well, which kind of led me to almost like why I almost resented the pressed penny. When first time I saw a pressed quarter machine, I was like, okay. And it was for very specific hot properties like Star Wars and Toy Story and all these ones that were like really popular. And there's you end up spending over double what you would, obviously because the currency. But I was like, okay, I don't know. I'm already spending this much on this. I don't know. I'm not going to throw quarters at it as well.
One thing you will learn as this conversation continues is that I am a completionist, so I don't like collecting things unless I can have a complete set. And pressed coins, it's never going to happen.
Oof.
Like, they change super often. There's so many options. In fact, what is it? Let's see. Magic Kingdom, 32 machines. Epcot, 36 machines. Disney's Animal Kingdom, 24 machines. Disney's Hollywood Studios, 27 machines. Disney Springs, 24 machines. What else was there? DCA, 17 machines.
There's resorts, yeah.
Yeah, Downtown Disney, 8 machines. They're like over 200 total machines. It's over 750 designs in Walt Disney World alone. Like, of course, I'm sure these numbers fluctuate up and down, but these are insane amounts of pressed coins available.
Yeah, one of the things, again, the number, just in Walt Disney World, 750 designs alone. For you, who is a completionist, that's nightmarish. Or it's enlightening to know that you'll never be done. I mean, you're never going to be done, so you're always going to be able to kind of do what you enjoy. One of the things I found interesting in watching a couple videos on it, people who really do collect these things, they value pennies made before certain dates. I believe the date was 1982 because of the amount of copper in each penny is higher. So literally the currency would be higher. I think it's zinc that they use nowadays or post that date. So the actual penny is worth more.
It's funny that you say that because when I was pressing a penny, there was somebody next to me who clearly did this off. And I was always looking for like the shiniest penny to press, thinking that would make the best piece of art. And she was like, no, look at the year, make sure it's before the 80s, and it'll press better because there's more copper, and it actually, the way that it presses the penny, it creates a better image, and because there's less copper in the newer ones, it flattens it more or something. It does something to the coin where it doesn't look as good. And I found that so fascinating, and like you saw it in research, and this person like knew it by being a diehard collector, and I just think that's all really funny. It's so, pressed coins.
The new ones, you say that, I thought the same thing, especially after we got home from our trip back then, and I was washing pennies because the difference in colors was the disparity was so high. But looking at the newer ones, especially like the really shiny ones, it almost looks like the image is melted. It's like pulled and so flat. So yeah, it makes sense. I would prefer them shiny, but considering, you know, I mean, do you value the image or do you value the overall look? And I don't want to wash pennies again. So
maybe I should start a business where I just sell copper penny discs, essentially, where it's not currency. It's just, you know, a copper circled disc the same size as a penny, made specifically for these pressed coin machines. That might be a business.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Maybe I'll put like a little DCTC logo on it or something, and then you can smooth that out with the machine. Of course, pressed coins are a big hit, but when you talk about Disney collectibles, I think most people would agree that pins is where it's at. Disney pin trading is massive. It started in October of 1999 as part of the Epcot Millennium Celebration, and this was actually inspired by the Olympics. At the time, the president of Walt Disney World was George Kalogridis. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but he went on a research trip to the Olympics to kind of get inspiration on how they could plus the Millennium Celebration, and one of the things that he found was pin trading. Had you heard about this before?
Yeah, so shout out to Rob Plays. He has a fantastic video on this where he goes really into detail. But I was familiar because, weird story, Nintendo 64 had a video game for the Nagano Olympics.
Oh.
And it was the year my family moved back to Massachusetts. So I really followed this because I wanted to be better at the game and know what was going on. And I was a kid. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I remember people talking about athletes trading pins. And this is something that they have done way before Disney, and they still do it. You know, in my line of work, I work with a lot of Olympians, and they still do this kind of thing. They're very collectible, and they have been before, you know, the Millennium Celebration, before Disney, and then this is something that predates a lot of what Disney is. And I mean, talking about being a completist, my goodness, there's no way that's ever going to happen. And they even say that. And one of the things that I found really fascinating was there's pin collecting, but the idea of trading the pins is what they really promote. I mean, it's on the Walt Disney World website. It's on the Disneyland Resort website where it's pin trading. It's not pin collecting. And there are rules for it. I mean, there are guidelines what you can and can't do. And, you know, when things are released. I mean, there are sites, dozens and dozens of websites and networks and forums dedicated to collecting these things. And in my opinion, I mean, I think they are beautiful, ornate pieces of artwork. I think I have maybe 6 of them, 7. The ones I have, I really, really like, and then I have them for specific reasons. Like I have one, I went on the Backstage Magic tour in Walt Disney World, and you got a really cool pin. That was my first one. And I got one for the Tower of Terror when it turned 25 last year. So I don't have a lot, and I'm glad because there's no way I'd be able to collect them all, and they are not cheap either.
Yeah, so here's the thing when it comes to pins. Number one, there are over 100,000 pin designs, so forget the completionist mentality there. Here's what got me into pin trading for about a 6-month period. I was staying at the Grand Californian, and they gave me 3 pins. They gave them to me, and they weren't pins that I cared to keep. But I learned quickly that basically you can trade with a cast member and they cannot say no. So I found some Mickey Mouse, some Ursula, and like those were my favorites. And so they kind of roped me in with those 3 free pins. And then for a little while I was like, okay, Mickey and Ursula, like that's what I'm collecting. And then it got to a point I'm like, this is ridiculous. Forget this. I, like you, do have pins. In fact, I'm looking at one right now from my Walk on Walt's Footsteps tour at Disneyland. And, you know, I'll keep them from the special tours. And I keep them basically if they're given to me. D23 will send them out a lot and I'll keep those. But I'm over shopping for pins. I'm over trading pins that did not last a very long time for me. But I will say one thing that like we've gotten into that I don't care for, I wish the pins were just pins. I don't like when they become, you know, like this one, the one I have in my hand is like a book. It has like a binding and hinges and opens. Then there are some giant ones that are like artwork now. And then there's a bunch of different variations. And I'm like, just let the pin be the pin.
Yeah, I think they almost have these ideas where, all right, we have all this artwork, we have all these ideas, we have all these concepts that we can do, but how many pins would we sell next to a print or a figure or something? It's easy. The benefit that pins have is that they're small. You can have a lot of them. But if you're, you know, my age, your age, you know, whoever, you know, you're behind the collecting bandwagon so much, there is no way you are ever gonna, I mean, you do have to shop. You do have to go and find things because, like, oh, I like this design, I like this character, what have you. There may be 24 different designs for that person already by the time you started collecting. Yeah. And one of the things I found in my research, some of the interesting things was there's no pin trading at Tokyo Disney Resort. And researching why was kind of blew my mind. They just quickly had to shut it down. There was so much demand. The lines were so long that it was shutting down parts of the resort. No one could move in certain parts of their attractions, their gift shops. So they were like, you know what, we're not doing this. And that's going back to 2002. So in really the infancy of pin trading in general, they're just like, nope, this is too crazy. And I couldn't believe that, but it was so disruptive.
Yeah, I will never understand the waiting in line for merch. Like, it's few and far between. If you're going to have a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids sale or something, then I'd be there. But I don't know. There are people who are just there for everything. And I just can't wrap my head around that. It is crazy to me. And that's hilarious about the Tokyo thing. One thing I will say, during that period when I was trading, one thing, I was lucky enough to have access to Company D, which is the cast member shop where they kind of like sell things cheap that they're trying to get rid of. And the thing about pins is you can buy the cheapest one you can find, and then if you can convince somebody to trade you for a better one or a more expensive one, you can do it. And like I said, cast members can't say no as long as it's an official Disney pin. So I would buy them cheap at Company D and then trade with cast members. And, you know, if you don't have access to someplace like Company D, keep your eye. Maybe there are sales in the, you know, Disney stores. And I wouldn't be surprised if you could find somebody on eBay who's just, you know, come across a bunch of pins and maybe getting rid of them. Plus, there are a ton that just really aren't worth anything. So if they stop meaning anything to you, like emotionally, people, I'm sure, sell them for cheap. So there are ways to trade, you know, smartly, I guess, if you're really, really into it. But honestly, I would say stay away because it's a bad addiction.
Yeah. It is. It's a rabbit hole. It's something that you're never going to be able to complete. And again, that's by design. As long as the demand stays up, in which you and I will talk about things that maybe didn't reach that demand. But as long as people keep buying, as long as they keep, you know, like, yeah, I'll spend $14 for this. Yeah, I'll spend this. Yeah, I'll go to these events. I'll wait in line. As long as people keep doing that, they're going to keep rolling out the pins. I honestly, like, again, having never done pin trading at all, and you mentioned getting free pins. I stayed at the Coronado Springs Resort in Walt Disney World 2 years ago when it was getting redone, and they were like, oh, sorry, we're under construction. Here's the 3 pins. So they kind of bait you in. They're like, here you go. Like, here's a little bit. Here's a taste of it. But like, I just never had a desire to do any pin trading whatsoever. So when I researched the rules that are listed on the resort websites, I was like, wait a sec. They not only did they acknowledge trading, did they encourage it, but there are rules what you can and can't do. Like, you can't touch a cast member's lanyard. You can only trade with a cast member up to twice a day. But if they switch shifts, you can go back to them. So I was like, and they can't say no, like you mentioned before. I was like, wait a second. So the whole thing blows my mind. But I just think they're just beautiful pieces of artwork, and the ones that I do have, I really do enjoy.
And you know what's crazy is the cost to make those things is dirt cheap. The profit margin is through the roof for those things. Once the artwork is complete, you know, that's a one-time payment. It's pretty inexpensive. So in the long run, so it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's there was definitely a height of pin trading. I see it less and less. I feel like it's talked about less, but it's still very popular, and there's still specialty pins for everything. The thing I never got about it was like, I don't know what to do with these after I get them. Like, I'm not the type of person to wear a pin on my jacket. I just don't know what to do with them. And I don't enjoy wearing it like around my neck in the parks or anything. It's weird.
Yeah, you get these lanyards and they end up weighing 25 pounds because they're covered in this metal. That's the thing. Like, not only are these things, they get heavy, but in addition to that, like, they're so valuable in a lot of ways. You don't want to wear them on things that could get damaged.
Yeah.
And things like that. So
yeah, it's weird. In any case, those are pins for you. Let's go to Vinylmation. This got really popular in 2008. They first appeared, okay, I had never even heard of this, at the Festival of the Masters at Downtown Disney at Walt Disney World. I hadn't heard of this. Had you?
No, not until I started researching where these things came from. And for me, I went to the parks in 2012 in Walt Disney World, and I was like, what are these things? Not only were they everywhere by then, but I had no knowledge of them prior to that. So digging into the research and finding out where it came from was definitely interesting, especially when you find out that the first one was sort of like okay, like, let's see what happens with this. And it was just a plain white Mickey figure that you drew on and painted on and you created your own design with. And that idea just took off.
Yeah, now, this might sound weird, and I couldn't find it in the research, but I swear that something very, very, very similar existed, but it wasn't Mickey. It was just like a little person, because I'm pretty sure that Rosie O'Donnell used to be really into drawing on them, and she would sell them through her talk show for charity and stuff. And she was like really into, you know, like you said, they were little white figures that you could create your own little art on. She used to do a ton of them, but they weren't Mickey Mouse. So do you remember these?
Yeah, I remember seeing them in like crafts aisles that, I don't know if it was vinyl, but it was some sort of figure, you know, not very large, where you could create your own design on.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, was Vinylmation, does that only apply to the Mickey figure, or what? I couldn't find the research. I was looking. My guess is that since I couldn't find any information about it, I think the non-Disney ones had a different name. So it was definitely this massive trend. Of course, it being so popular, they started creating different versions of it that weren't white, that basically celebrated every Disney character you could think of. And they were pretty hot for a while. Never really got into these. In fact, I don't think I ever had a Vinylmation or had a desire to have one. Plus...
Yeah, me either.
Plus, me being me, I don't like that there was a lot of secrecy behind them, because you didn't know what you were getting. They all came in like opaque packaging, and it was a surprise as to what figure you were going to get once they started printing different designs. That's not my cup of tea.
I don't understand that. Like, why, you know, it's like the opposite. They took a lot of aspects of what was so popular with pin trading, and they applied it to Vinylmation with an asterisk next to it, basically like, oh, we're going to do this instead, which, like, you're not going to see the design you get. I mean, they have that option for pins, a very, very small percentage where you can get a mystery bag. But when that's all the Vinylmation, it was like, when I researched that, and when I would see this in the various stores, I was like, wait a second, you're not going to know what you get? And they did. They encouraged trading. They encouraged all the same things that pins did, but they didn't tell you what you were going to get. And this is how popular it got. They opened a store for it. Not a kiosk like you know, the pin trading booths at, you know, various different locations throughout the parks. They opened a legitimate store in both Downtown Disney, in Walt Disney World, and Disneyland that was 100% at the time it opened dedicated to these figures. And like you, I didn't see the desire behind it. I thought they were cool, and I thought they were very creative, because not only did they use characters, but they took attractions and cool, like, symbols of the parks and characters and Disney history, and like sort of just painted them on the mouse figure. And later on they created a mini version, so there was like a Minnie Mouse in addition to the Mickey Mouse, and there's different sizes. You know, they went up to, I believe, 9 inches, and there was an 1.5 inch version. So they had all the variations and the different ideas of the pin trading, but that just went up really, really high. I think 2010 is when they opened the store. 2012, it was super hot, and then it just dipped. It just fell apart.
Yeah, some of the things that seem to kind of, I'm not going to say they were necessarily inspired by this, but they definitely feel like they spun off a little bit, where the Tsum Tsums became really big. And the thing that I kind of got into, not on purpose, but Funko Pops. I have a Funko Pop collection now. There was never the intention of this for me. But the thing I love about my first Funko Pop, first of all, most of them were gifts, and that's lovely. But the first one was a Mickey Mouse. And the thing that I kind of love about Funko Pop is they take pop culture things that don't necessarily get a ton of love. Like, I have Little Shop of Horror Funko Pops. Like, you're not going to find any other Little Shop of Horrors toys. Did you just say you would?
You would.
Of course. Well, there's a Rick Moranis. Of course I have it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, no, what do I have? I have some Little Shop of Horrors, some Jurassic Park, some Norman Bates Psycho, the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus, all 5 NSYNC guys. Those were the 5 I actually purchased. The rest were gifts. But the NSYNC guys, when they announced those, I was like, I am getting those, definitely. And Mickey Mouse. So, in any case, I like Funko Pop.
What I think is interesting is you talk about the Tsum Tsums and the Funko Pop. It's 2 items that weren't created specifically for Disney, that sort of got a Disney-made product out of business. So it's like, this isn't some, like Tsum Tsums and the Funko Pops are for a million different things. They're not specific for Disney. Yeah. And it put this Disney product out of business in a lot of ways. And again, I don't know if they were running before they could walk, opening that store. But I remember going later on in 2016 and then in 2018, and there was just barely anything that was focused on the Vinylmation by the end of it. And it closed shortly after in 2018, and in 2015 in Walt Disney World, in 2018 in Disneyland. It was just gone. It's converted. I think there's a Star Wars outpost in one of them. Not sure what it is in Disneyland, but it was gone in less than a decade.
Yeah. Now, I just want to add before we move on from here, just because I do like Funko Pop, there's an amazing Funko Pop store in Hollywood, close to the Pantages Theater, Hollywood and Vine. It's awesome. Like, I went in really not expecting much. It's this massive store with massive Funko Pop figures. You can see some of it in the Instagram highlight stories on Instagram for Disney Coast to Coast, but it's incredible, and I guess I love Funko Pops, man. I just have to admit this. Let's move on to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, because Walt Disney created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, but this was a character before Mickey Mouse. This character was taken away from Walt, and he was making it for Universal Pictures, and there were some contract mess-ups on Walt's part. He didn't read the fine print, and Universal ended up owning the character. That was many, many, many years ago, until 2006, when Bob Iger negotiated a contract to get Oswald the Lucky Rabbit back into ownership by Disney, which was pretty cool. This is one of the things I really applaud Bob Iger for buying. I think it's very cool. But, we had a little bit of Oswald mania for a little while. It didn't really catch on probably as much as they would like, but there was a bit of it for a while.
The first time, and I think the only time I ever saw him as a character in the parks, was in my first trip to Disneyland in 2015. So that was really at like the height, the pinnacle of when he what was so present. But first time I remember seeing, I remember seeing Lucky Brand Jeans put out a series of, I think it was T-shirts that had him on it, and this was right before Disney got the rights back. So I was like, knowing who the character is, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, you have this character like on apparel, like, this is unheard of. And then in 2012, is the first time I saw him in the parks on things, and there were ears and T-shirts and plushes and all these things. I was like, okay, and that was right around the time we got him back. It's like they didn't put him in other things. So you're sort of outside of a video game, you had to sort of know who he was.
Yeah,
and a little bit
totally.
of the history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it was like, oh, this character who kind of looks like Mickey. If I'm a kid and I don't have all this history of the character behind me, like, I don't really know who this character is, why they're everywhere. He was on signs. He was, they used him in a lot of different ways, but I don't think it took off because they didn't put him in other media. You really had to have an understanding of who he was.
I kind of wish they did with Oswald what they did with Mickey with the Mickey shorts, the current Mickey shorts. I wish that they had done that with Oswald instead, personally. I think that would have
100%.
given him more of a life when it comes to merch. He was on quite a bit. He was doing regular character meet and greets for several years in the parks, but it didn't spark. Like you said, it was for the Epic Mickey video game, but there are a lot of people who just aren't gamers at all, including myself. I just knew the history of Oswald, so I don't know. It's interesting, but it was a bit of a trend for a little while. You can still find him on stuff, but it did not blow up the way that pins and Vinylmation and such did. So it's interesting.
It was totally interesting to see that, talking about Disney trends, what was the thinking behind, getting him involved in the parks like he was, and then taking him out right after. It's one thing to get the character back and to do other things, like you said, include him in shorts and animation. I mean, really where he came from, but they decided, okay, let's have a character meet and greet. Well, why would you have a character meet and greet for a character that you're not going to put in things?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are very few people that are alive who remember seeing him in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. But one thing that certainly did catch on, unlike Oswald, were rose gold. Rose gold became a phenomenon. And why don't you explain how this went back to actually, way back when in the 19th century, this rose gold was created in Russia.
Basically, you had this Russian scientist in the turn of the century who was just messing around with different metals and found that, the more copper you would add to gold, the different colors you would create. Now, gold is a very malleable metal. So, and people would bite on gold, and you see Olympians do it when they get the gold medal, they bite on it. If you bite too hard, you will leave your teeth marks in it. That's how you know it's real gold. But in order to make it so it's solid, you had to add other metals. So people added copper to them commonly, and this particular scientist added more copper, and the color changed from a gold to a rose gold pink. Now, for a super long time, they called it Russian gold. That's how it was referred to, and it was around for a super long time. And doing the research, it was in the parks for a long time before it just blew up and lit up Instagram every other second, with people posting. I mean, I saw a t-shirt with a picture of the rose gold ears. So a piece of apparel with a piece of apparel on it. That's how popular this is. It really took, it's been around since, 2012, around-ish, and it started catching fire ridiculously in 2017 around the summer, and that was due in huge part, maybe solely because Disney star Sabrina Carpenter posted a photo of her wearing these rose gold ears. And because it was at meteoric popularity, there wasn't a ton of stock. So when people saw this and wanted them, you rush a store that doesn't have as, the demand is so much higher than the supply, then it catches fire even more because they don't have them in stock. So people are constantly looking for it. And I remember when I went to the parks, my wife was talking all about it. I didn't know what the heck it was, but every girl I saw had these ears. And I'm like, what the heck? And one of the other things I found interesting was this isn't like, talking about a couple of the other topics, it isn't solely a Disney thing. Rose gold became very popular in society. You had iPhones, the Apple Watch, tons of people get engagement rings now that are rose gold. My sister-in-law has a rose gold engagement ring. It's just popular within culture, and it became very big. It's still big, not as big as it was a few years ago, but it is. It's one of those things that Disney was like, oh, yes, thank you. We want to do this with everything now.
Yeah.
They want more rose gold type things.
Yeah, my sister Andrea wanted the ears, and I was looking for them for her for a while, and there was a good period of time where it was just like, they are not available, like they're nowhere. And then one day I actually saw it and I was like, oh great, can I have one of those? And I got it for my sister, and then like everywhere I turned they had them. I was like, oh okay, they restocked and now they have way too many of them because the trend has kind of ended, and they just bought an insane amount of them because, you know, they were ultra popular. But as you mentioned, this did start a trend. You know, in 2019 we ended up getting Belle of the Ball bronze, so we get this other, you know, color that is becoming a trend. Then there's Imagination Pink, Potion Purple, all these color trends that they were kind of trying to make a thing. And the minute you try and make something a thing, it's no longer a thing. So, I mean...
Yeah, and they had the same exact items for all these different colors. What I noticed, I was at the parks in January, and it was the first time I saw Belle of the Ball bronze. Try saying that 3 times fast. First time I saw it, and my wife was like, oh yeah, they're just trying to do rose gold pink again. They're trying to capture that. And they had the same exact items, the jerseys, the plushes, the backpacks, the ears. So it's literally like they took the exact same thing that we're selling with rose gold and said, okay, next color, okay, next color. And, you know, it's going to be popular. It's going to sell because you know, people like that stuff. They like the apparel. They like the designs of the certain things. But, you know, like you said, when you try to make it a trend, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You know, circumstances were, I mean, outside of Disney's control, made rose gold so popular. Again, talking about just, it was in the zeitgeist with Apple. I mean, Disney had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So when they're trying to do these other colors, I mean, it's nothing they can really duplicate.
Let's move on to the Starbucks You Are Here mugs, because this is something that for a while I totally was into, and then I was like, oh, you just made it too crazy for me. But these You Are Here mugs, they were around since 2014 on mugs and tumblers, and they had them for different cities that you would visit, and they all had a very particular style, but they celebrated different areas of the country or wherever you were. And then a bit later on, they ended up in the Starbucks in the Disney parks. The series for Disney began in 2017 with some small mugs that were like ornaments and more like artwork, and then eventually they became the full-size mugs and the tumblers and everything. And I really, really liked them because this was something that I was like, ooh, as a collector, I can dig this. I can get one for Disneyland. I can get one for DCA. I can get one for Epcot, Magic Kingdom, Disney's Animal Kingdom, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and be good. In fact, I'm looking at my Disney's Hollywood Studios one right now that sits on my desk. I have it because the Earful Tower is on it. But then they decided to make multiple versions of this mug, and like Magic Kingdom had more than one You Are Here mug, as did all the parks, and that got so annoying to me because I'm like, okay, I want one from each park, but I want one from each park that makes a complete set. But now you're telling me I could never have a complete set because you have multiples for each park. It was very annoying to me. I wish they hadn't done that, but this trend, it didn't last super long. It was a few years before they retired the You Are Here and then started making these Been There mugs, which frankly, I don't like the style at all on those. The You Are Here, very minimal, very, I don't know, it wouldn't be like deco style, but it's very simple, minimalist kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very minimalist, yeah.
Yeah. The Been There, not as much a fan.
No, I same thing, you know, I found when I went in 2017, the first time I saw the tumblers, the Mickey tumblers of the Walt Disney World parks. So I was able to get one for each park, and I just thought they were just awesome. They were just these beautiful pieces of artwork where you had Mickey with all these different, you know, icons, you know, making up the character, and I thought they were beautiful. So I got the 4 of those, and I know DCA has one. I know It's a Small World has them. It's not a Disney thing. It's a Starbucks thing that happens to have a presence within Disney. They are popular. They're really cool. Like I said, I have 4 myself, but it's not something that I guess has the originality of some of the other Disney ideas, which, you know, for me is a little disappointing. You know, I like having things that are specifically created for the parks, but, you know, they're still cool, and I still enjoy them. Yeah,
Universal Studios has nice versions as well, so I like them overall. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just wish they didn't make so many multiples, but that's a whole other thing. And then, of course, there's nostalgia merchandise, which has become a thing. We have stuff like Orange Bird, which is a character a lot of people don't even remember from way back in the 70s when Sunshine Tree Terrace and Adventureland had a collaboration with the Florida Citrus Commission. It was this weird thing. It was a sponsor, then it became an icon. Now it's like trendy and nostalgic. So they started throwing Orange Bird on merchandise. Figment is one that always amazes me because you always hear this fear of Figment being removed from the parks. And, you know, he doesn't seem to be going anywhere when he's got topiaries and t-shirts. It feels like everywhere. Then there's the retro stuff, the 1980s and 70s kind of styles that we're starting to see. And, you know, even like Epcot becoming Epcot again with all the capital letters recently is such a retro throwback. Not that that's merch, but we're going to start seeing that on t-shirts and stuff if we haven't already. It's kind of crazy. Yep. How do you feel about the nostalgia stuff they've got out there?
Well, I think, you know, as a society in general, you look at, you know, there's a nostalgia. I mean, Stranger Things is a super popular show, and it is 100% based on nostalgia for 80s horror movies. And it's one of those things that it's a societal thing. You know, people are into nostalgia. It's just popular. You know, in my research, you know, finding things like the 70s style and these pre-faded shirts and 90s VHS tape shirts. Like you can get the Emperor's New Groove VHS tape looking shirt. I was like, wow, it's so incredibly nostalgic for certainly our generation. It's cool. I like some aspects of it. I definitely like it in Epcot, but I almost feel like you're giving people a little bit, knowing that you're not going to do it all. And what I mean by that is, you know, you're putting Figment on all these things, but you won't fix his attraction. You know, you won't give him the attention that he really deserves. Like, oh, look, he's here and he's there and he's here, and oh, that's great. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's almost like they know how to make a certain group happy. So they're going to continue to do that, despite the fact they may not, you know, be following through 100%.
Yeah. The nostalgia thing that I really thought was cool was the 90s VHS tape notebooks that they created. And I know that they've made iPhone cases now too. I thought those are spectacular. And whenever I see Disney Afternoon stuff on t-shirts and stuff, like that's really cool. We've got a lot of Mickey Mouse Club merchandise, which is pretty cool. So, you know, retro merch kind of galore. And it's cool. I like it. It's just one of those things that I do feel like we're in that place of, I can't tell anymore, is it retro or is it just that style has come back in some cases? Because I'm like, oh, I think like neon is officially back now. It's this weird cyclical thing that always happens. In addition to nostalgic stuff, there's some meta stuff as well that we start seeing in the parks. Because, you know, one thing Disney noticed was a lot of, you know, people call them the Etsy shops, where people were doing kind of self-referential t-shirts with turkey legs on them and stuff like that. And now Disney has started doing that themselves. It's pretty crazy the amount, you know, there is very much an Etsy wall when you walk into the Emporium now. And I mean, good for them for doing it, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know, it makes it a little less cool because it's official now. I don't know.
Yeah, they're sort of safely poking fun at themselves. Like, you're not going to see the shirts that say most expensive day ever.
Right.
It's a very popular one.
Right.
But you're going to see them poking fun at, oh, like, look at all the snacks that we have, and ice cream, and churros, and turkey legs, and, you know, eat, sleep, Disney, repeat. Like, that's a real popular one. It's like, yeah, they're going to poke the safe amount of fun at themselves. But at the same time, they're like, you know what? We want to cash in on these trends of sort of poking fun at ourselves, but we're going to do it in a very Disney-like manner.
And let's face it, like, consumer products is a really huge business for Disney. It always has been, but I feel like it's even more now than ever because I can't even remember how many years ago it was at this point. But when they made consumer products the same division as parks and experiences, like, that's very telling. And we're seeing that now. As you mentioned, I did the whole Galaxy's Edge episode on merchandise, but like, new lands are going to be very much focused around merchandise. And I think that's even going to just happen more and more with Bob Chapek leading the company. So merch has always been big for Disney, but I feel like it's even bigger now than ever. And it is interesting, though, in some cases when it comes to attractions, we will have tons of merchandise for certain attractions and not so much for others. So I'm wondering if there are any that you love that has a ton of merchandise and then others that you like really wish had more.
Well, definitely a lot that, like I said, I could talk about this topic forever. I mean, my goodness, like every time I get off Space Mountain, I just frown my way through the exit of that gift shop. I'm just so disappointed that, I mean, considering how historic, groundbreaking, the list goes on of amazing things Space Mountain throughout the world has done, and this is the gift shop you give them. I don't want to see Star Wars stuff in the Space Mountain gift shop. There is so much. I mean, talk about nostalgia. Talk about like all the things you could do for this gift shop, and it's so disappointing. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad doesn't even have one. I mean, this is a 40-plus-year-old attraction that you get off, and it's like, okay, like we're in Frontierland now, like see you later. Like no, like if they tied things in more with the story, you could do that, or even celebrating the anniversaries. One thing Disney has done recently, and breaks my heart to bring up the Great Movie Ride, but I had to, but that attraction had more merchandise when it closed than it did when it was open. I mean, think of all the shirts.
You want to hear a funny...
Go ahead. I want to hear
No, so I don't know how truthful or factual this is, but this is what I heard. Remember back when there was the big rumor going around about Disney's Hollywood Studios going to change its name, the name of the park, and Bob Iger kind of confirmed this at a conference. So apparently they did learn that a really good way to make some money is to make merchandise for the things that are going away. So they had this whole merchandise campaign where the slogan was "Say Goodbye to Hollywood." And they were going to print everything, from the Billy Joel song, "Say Goodbye to Hollywood." Yeah. They were going to say goodbye to Hollywood was the slogan to say goodbye to Disney's Hollywood Studios for whatever the new name was going to be. I think that choice has been reversed since then, and if it hasn't, it's been pushed off into the future. But it's just interesting to me, if that story is true, that people were planning for that because, like, let's make money, it's closing, great movie. I never buy parks merch online. I'm not much of a merch guy in general, but I never go out of my way to buy it online. When Great Movie Ride closed, I bought a t-shirt. I was like, I must have this t-shirt. This is the flagship attraction of my favorite Disney park. Like, I need this. So they know they can make some money off of it, and good for them. But
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, if it had the attention given to it when it was open, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. But you got off that ride and you were back in Hollywood Studios or MGM or whatever you called it, but it had no merch. And maybe it was a licensing issue. More likely than not, it was a licensing issue for all the different intellectual properties that are on that attraction. But at the same time, put logo gear, Great Movie Ride. I mean, that stuff would sell crazily fast. And, for any one of these attractions that may not have a direct story, like I mentioned before, Big Thunder Mountain, just put that on something.
Yeah.
Pay homage to what it is.
You don't see too much Muppet Vision 3D stuff anymore, but I can remember.
Oh my God! All right, so story about that.
Well, I can remember when that store was all Muppets merch. The store near Muppet Vision 3D that you'll go in and you'll still see like the store is decorated like the old Muppet Show stuff and the Muppet movie, but the racks have barely any Muppets merchandise on it, and that's crazy.
When I was there in 2018. I, got off the attraction, walked over, and I love that gift shop because I love the gags in it. I think, it's so, you just look up and all this cool stuff. But I'm like, where's the Muppet stuff? So I was like, I got to ask somebody. So I found a cast member and I asked her, and she goes, it just wasn't selling. Yeah. And part of me just died. I'm like, what is it about the Muppets that people just don't find appealing anymore?
There's a gap. There's a generational gap. So there's people like our age and older who know and love the Muppets. The people like a generation below us have no history with the Muppets. But right now, the kids are growing up with the new Muppet Babies that's doing very, very well. So in about 10, 15, 20 years, the Muppets will be big again for them. But yeah, there's just a huge generational gap, and I think that the people that buy a lot of merch tend to be that age range that is just missing the Muppets right now. And on top of that, it doesn't seem like the people leading the company care too much about the Muppets either at the moment. So
yeah, that's pretty evident.
It's weird because every once in a while we'll get something amazing like their show at Magic Kingdom, or even just this little barbecue place that I hear is very minimally Muppets, but still the fact that it's, Sam Eagle is the icon for that is like encouraging. It's this weird back and forth, their relationship with the Muppets. It's very strange. But the thing that, of course, I'm missing merchandise for is there was never a ton of Honey, I Shrunk the Audience merchandise or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set adventure, which I would have loved to see.
Yeah, that's...
Why are you laughing? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I think you may be the only person, but...
No, whoa, wait a second. Can we talk... We're going to go down this road. Okay, here we go. 1989. Right. What made more money, Little Mermaid or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids made more money in 1989 when they both came out. I mean, I think there are people... They're doing Shrunk. They're bringing it back. It was a massive franchise.
Yeah. Hope so. I hope it takes off, but you talk, maybe that's appealing to people like yourself who have these great memories of it. And I love the movie. I love the sequels too. I really enjoyed it. I love the attraction, but it's just, I don't think the way it was done and the movies is like, did it age well? And a lot of these things is like, they need some updating. They need some TLC, and Disney just wasn't ready to apply that.
Yeah, it's, we could go on a whole tangent about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But in any case, that's kind of it for, the major milestones or bullet points of merchandise conversation for the Disney parks. So is there anything else you want to add before we get to some trivia?
I'll mention, we have some attractions that do have, a lot of great merch. And, Haunted Mansion is super popular.
Probably the most merch is Haunted Mansion. It's insane.
It's everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. It's everywhere. Pirates, Test Track, and Mission Space, which I find very interesting. Mission Space, considering it is not popular. That you can walk on that ride whenever, but it has a gift shop with merchandise, and yet, like I mentioned before, some of those Spaceship Earth doesn't, which. That blows my mind. Jungle Cruise doesn't, but Test Track and Mission Space do.
I feel like I've seen a few T-shirts for Jungle Cruise, but not a ton of merch. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Twilight Zone Tower Terror has a great gift shop. Some of them, they do a good job, so I'll definitely give them credit where credit's due in that capacity. All the new lands, Pandora, Toy Story Land, all the, obviously Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, all the new lands, Cars Land, they have a ton. But I'm a nostalgic person. I like certain attractions that they don't really get a lot of love.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the ones in the past. Horizons didn't. Great Movie Ride didn't.
I need some Carousel of Progress merch. That's what I need.
Yeah, they did release, and I actually
a little bit
was able to pick it up. The 45th anniversary.
The T-shirt
apparel. Yeah, I got the T-shirt, and they got some pins. But I think I was on the attraction in January. It broke down twice.
Oh no.
And I think if they put a little bit more, TLC into the attraction, and maybe I would appreciate if they held back on the apparel and put some attention into the attraction, so it wasn't breaking down all the time.
Or sell the apparel to raise the money to update the attraction.
Exactly.
My thing is art prints. Those are the things that I
love art.
That's where my money goes, is art prints.
Yep.
For most of the merchandise. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can't see, but I have my whole office is pretty much covered in this stuff. In any capacity I can, I keep a bunch of stuff in different rooms, and I don't even have room for it. But
I was going to say, I have
prints.
I have so much artwork under my bed and in a corner just because there's no more wall space for it. But in any case, that was a fun conversation about Disney merchandise, but let's get to some trivia, shall we?
Do you know the answer? Get your brain gears churning and play along. It's trivia time.
Alrighty, Jeff, do you want to hit me with the trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
I'll hit you with the one, you're a very knowledgeable individual, and I've heard some pretty out-of-the-world trivias already asked on your show. So mine will be a little bit more difficult. You'll probably be able to ballpark it, but we talked about Starbucks mugs.
Okay.
What was the year that they started?
Mugs in general, or the You Are Here mugs?
The Starbucks mug designs.
Oh, gosh. I don't even know when Starbucks launched. I'm going to take a wild stab. I'm going to say 2002.
1994.
1994. How long has Starbucks been around? I am not a coffee drinker at all.
Late 80s, I believe.
Okay.
But they have a whole wiki website dedicated to when the mugs were released and where, like, certain locations, how many designs they have for this state, for this city. That's,
it's like
it's
pin
crazy.
trading.
And I'm like, yeah, 1994. According to that website, it was, I was pretty blown away because, I think Starbucks does a great job with their designs as a company, but I can't think of anything within the last 10 years before the last 10 years.
Here's the thing that's interesting is I don't remember Starbucks existing when I was in high school, and clearly it did, but I don't remember it. Like, I feel like it came along later. I'm sure there were far fewer chains and stuff, but man, it's everywhere now, and basically you can't exist as a theme park, it seems like, without having one there, or else people complain. It's crazy. But my question for you is, when and where did the first Disney store open?
Ooh. When and where? Oh, I don't know. I'm going to say in Anaheim.
Nope.
Oh, wasn't it Anaheim?
Nope.
Was it Chicago?
Nope. You had the right state before.
Right.
It's in California.
Okay. Burbank?
Nope, but close to Burbank.
Closer. I don't know. I know very few cities in California.
So Glendale.
Glendale.
Yeah. At the Glendale Galleria. Imagineering is in Glendale, and I believe so is Consumer Products. So it was that was their test base so that they could go and, keep tabs on it and see whether or not it worked. Do you have any idea of a date or a year at the very least?
I'm going to say 87.
Boom, you hit that. Yes, 1987.
All right.
March 28th, 1987. So actually we just celebrated an anniversary for it, I guess. But from that one little store, it became, everywhere for a while. And gosh, I loved the Disney store as a kid. It had a very different look when we were kids, but now it's different, but it still exists, and it's a thing.
It barely exists.
Yeah,
I can tell you on the East Coast, it is. There's one in Times Square.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe one in Massachusetts. I loved them as a kid. That was a stop every mall trip.
Yeah.
But then we're talking about mall trips, and malls are, they're going not too well either. Yeah. So.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we go, is there anything that you want to plug?
Oh, no, I'm not much of a plugger. I'm happy to do this. This was fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the parks, huge fan of your show. I'm going to make sure that I plug your show all over my minimal social media, but I'll be sure to let everybody know.
No, I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for being a patron of Disney Coast to Coast. You support the show over at patreon.com/DisneyCTC. So thank you for that. It truly is because of folks like you that I can make as many episodes as I do, which has reached an ungodly number, it seems like. But thank you so much. And thanks for suggesting this topic and coming on and talking about it.
My pleasure.
I hope you folks enjoyed that discussion about Disney Parks merchandise, and if you haven't listened to last Wednesday's episode yet, be sure to tune in as we discuss a retro throwback to a classic Disney parade tradition. And don't forget that you can hear the latest Disney news in the House of Mouse headlines every Sunday. The easiest way to make sure you don't miss any of it is by subscribing. Also, on April 24th, we'll be having a live stream Q&A for members of the DCTC community. If you'd like to take part in the Q&A where you can ask me anything, you can learn more about that, plus more rewards over at patreon.com/DisneyCTC. That's patreon.com/DIZNEYCTC. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.